have with me today on this video Skype call to have a conversation about the Theatre Mine. There's Judy Graham, who is our treasurer, Tim Pope, board member, and Daniel Sullivan, who is our artistic director of the Theatre Mine. I'm Matthew Vire, and I'm the secretary of the Theatre Mine and co-founder along with Judy and Daniel. And today we want to have a conversation about the Theatre Mine and its formation and who we are and why we are and what we're all about, so that we can share that with people that are interested in supporting what we do and what we're about. So, what on earth is a theatre mine? I want to share what you wrote, Daniel, actually, in answer to this question. And you wrote, from a poetic point of view, rather than a site for extracting resources, this mine is an incubatory space within which theatrical ideas can be mined, dreamed, and brought forth. The Theatre Mine's name also points to both the literal and figurative practices of openly curious investigations of who we are personally and collectively. In the Theatre Mine, we don't just dig to find, we also dig just to dig. We do this digging with others, and this endeavoring is fun, even if nothing gets found, but we do find things, and we build upon them, and they inspire us to dig further, and eventually we share and perform our findings. The Silverton Theatre Mine is a container for this kind of creative, collaborative, artistic activity on multiple levels. Well said, Dan.
Well, there was a conversation with Matthew. I mean, it wasn't. It came from a collective endeavor.
So, Ted, recently we had a conversation last week, I think it was, Ted, and you articulated so well what was on all of our minds about what differentiates the Theatre Mine from a theater group. Because when this whole endeavor started between me and Judy and Daniel and Peter and many of us, it started after we lost Molly about a year ago. And initially, we were going to do a kind of scholarship fund, and so we were investigating where, what school or what might be the beneficiary of a scholarship fund on behalf of Molly. And it evolved basically to the point where we thought, well, let's support theater in Silverton. Molly, adored Silverton. She was very passionate about supporting theater arts in Silverton, and the natural thing from that led us to, well, let's support a theater group, because Molly was part of that. And this past summer, as we were there, that was still our intention right up until the end of May, to simply support a theater group. But then when we were there, Daniel and Judy and I had this inspiration, instead of simply supporting a theater group, to begin a separate organization, realizing that supporting a theater group and supporting theater arts in Silverton, that it needn't necessarily be simply supporting that particular group. And because of the different kind of work that Molly sought to do through a theater group, we thought we could just do that more efficiently on our own as a separate organization. And eventually we came to the conclusion that the creation of the Theatre Mine would be good for theater in Silverton, and would in fact be good for a theater group, because then they could more freely go and pursue their own mission, and we could find ways that we intersect. So, but you spoke to that last week. I don't know if you recall exactly what you said, but you gave four particulars about what differentiates us, and if you could share some of that, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. This is an important point, and it's just because I had worked with the theater group for many years, and I was conflicted myself by my excitement about the Silverton Theatre Mine. And so a number of thoughts occur to me with relation to both the theater group and the Silverton Theatre Mine. First of all, the theater group is well respected and should continue to be supported. There are several ideas, at least four I can think of right off, to understanding the need for the Silverton Theatre Mine, particularly to be able to undertake projects and activities that in scope and variety are not so well suited to a theater group's mission and history. Two, and this speaks to what Daniel had addressed earlier, a theater group's roots lie more in a convention and tradition of theater performance of more or less well-known plays. While it seems to me the Silverton Theatre Mine's roots are more allied to creation and experimental theater, in ways to bridge the conventional contrast between composer and performer. So both a theater group and the Silverton Theatre Mine can be mutually supportive and complement each other's roles without compromising one or the other's mission and founding values. I think that speaks to what Daniel and you had mentioned just a minute ago. One important part about the founding, the Silverton Theatre Mine was initiated, as I understand it, by the desire to memorialize and sustain the vision and creative vitality of Molly Mook-Fiddler, who was an artist, teacher, much beloved in Silverton for her work with a theater group, with San Juan College, and many other places around the region. Such a foundation and priority contributes to Molly's history with the theater group, while not reforming the center or history or the heart of ATG's productions. So the last point, the Silverton Theatre Mine, with its different roots and initiatives and projects, I think will be able to respond more flexibly to more diverse and perhaps expanded external funding, which is important. And because a theater group has a certain history of support and a certain history of external funding. And I think a new organization will give a little more flexibility that will contribute to both the Silverton Theatre Mine and a theater group ultimately. The more I reflect on the Silverton Theatre Mine and the theater group, I see that they can really be mutually supportive and can contribute to each other's creative activities.
To me, it seems like Silverton itself, the place, is like a muse. And its location brings out in me this desire to create. And so the vision that I had was to bring the joy of collaborative art, to bring more of that to that place. And in doing so, to bring more and more people to Silverton. My long-term vision would be that the Silverton Theatre Mine would facilitate and create artistic collaboration in Silverton that will actually draw people to Silverton. So not only to serve Silverton because we're bringing arts to Silverton and so the residents of Silverton can enjoy it, but also to create art in Silverton such that other people want to come there to experience it and other people want to come there to join in the collaboration of it. So my question, how will we as the Silverton Theatre Mine serve the community and promote arts in Silverton and the region?
You know, what I think about what we achieved this summer was, I think, we reached out using Molly's relations and we enacted what you just described, Matt. And we reached out to Durango and we made contact with Sarah Severson and Teresa Carson, and we asked them to come in. We created a relationship that's going to be fruitful, going forward. Sarah Severson had this Sarah Severson of the Raven Narratives, and she had this notion of an arts corridor. And she, beginning in Cortez, had begun, to construct a corridor that reached into Durango and had expressed the dream of including Silverton and eventually Ouray. And so I mean, there is now this regional relation that brings people into Silverton that hadn't been able to come or hadn't thought to or had other obstacles in their way, to bring art into Silverton, and then reflexively turn around and send art out, send theater back down the hill to Durango, to Cortez, to Mancos, and the future is the development and the furtherance of that idea.
Judy, Matthew made an interesting point about Silverton and the creative spirit. And I know you and I earlier had collaborated in the what we call the Silverton Center for Creative Studies. Don't you agree that there is a kind of energy in Silverton that would be so right for the Silverton Theatre Mine's being a creative core?
Well, Matthew kind of did touch on it by saying that Silverton was like a muse. And yes. Silverton, more than any place I've ever been, and it has to do with the mountain landscape, it has to do with high elevation, it has to do with the community itself. It's just the way that the look of the town, the look of the mountains, the vibe of the people, the way they all come together, and there's something about that combination that inspires us to want to be creative. The combination of personalities that came together last spring was so amazing, and it was a regional, national kind of combination of people, and the common denominator was Molly, and we were so incredibly compatible in a creative sense and in a way of working together.
And just to underscore one other point, with this additional creative core in Silverton, the Silverton Theatre Mine, and regional activities, it just reinforces the fact that ultimately this will contribute to a theater group, because you have that energy, you have a theater group's energy, and anything that brings more creative activities to Silverton or recognition of Silverton ultimately will benefit everyone.
Mm-hmm.